Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dirty Gaming, and a bit of a different video this time around. I'm really starting to struggle with my PC when playing Path of Exile to the point where I can't play anything where I'm super juicing maps. I can't really use a headhunter, as in any of these situations, my game sometimes grinds to a halt, to really low FPS. It's not really the FPS that's a problem, it's more the game freezes constantly, and then when it unfreezes, I'm dead. It even does it sometimes when I just activate a Sentinel in a map where there's lots of graphical background. The game just stutters and almost grinds to a halt. So it's killed me more times than I can remember, and it really does diminish the enjoyment of a lot of the time when you're playing the game, as a lot of the time it's just looking at still images, holding a button and hoping that you survive. The main reason I'm doing it is because I want to start streaming a lot more next league. But this league I really struggled to stream at all early on because my PC while streaming just couldn't handle it. And I don't have a second device to stream from, so I have to do everything from the same PC. Now, my PC is pretty old. Now, there's probably people using older rigs, and performance does really seem to vary depending on the hardware that you've got. But just for reference, I'm running an AMD 3600 6-core processor, and then I've got 16 gig of RAM, and then I've got an AMD Radeon RX 5700. And that combined, most of the time is okay, but as soon as you turn on the juice, it grinds to a halt. I think the CPU is the issue, is when I look at the stats for performance, that's the bar that's constantly full on the data screen in the game, but I don't know how accurate that is. And at the moment, with the insane prices of kind of any parts, pre-built PCs, stuff like that, I just don't want to be upgrading at the moment. Like, my PC is about 3 or 4 years old, cost me about £800, and it's about the same now, which is how insane the prices are at the moment for some things. So what I thought I'd do is try out GeForce Now. I've basically just gone for their most expensive subscription, which is £18 a month. And they say it gives you performance on par with an RTX 3080. So there's 3 options with GeForce Now. There's a free version, which puts you on like a random server or piece of hardware. You have to queue to get in, and you can only play for an hour before you have to re-queue into your profile. It's not really an option with an hour because at league start, you've got to be logged in way before that anyway. And also, I've tried this before when it first came out, and the hardware is no better than kind of what I'm using at the moment. The second option puts you on what they call a premium rig, which says it will give you 1080p and 60 FPS, and it gives you a 6-hour session before you've got to log in again. And I probably should have tested this one first. This version is £8 and the one I'm on is 18. For the £10 difference, I just thought I'd bite the bullet and go for the biggest package. And then if it's no good, you can just cancel it. You sign up for a month. If you don't like it, you cancel it and you don't get charged again. You can get it a bit cheaper if you want to do like 6 monthly subscriptions, but I don't know, what my situation is going to be in 6 months. So I'd rather just do it monthly. So before we get to the comparison, I just want to quickly mention some downsides to playing Path of Exile through GeForce Now, and there's a few. Firstly, you can't really access anything that's on your computer because it's a separate client. So any loot filters you've got saved in like your Path of Exile folders, you're not going to be able to access. So you can only access filters that you sync with Filterblade through Path of Exile, or that you follow in from someone else's profile. So most of mine that I make, when I make them custom, for some reason I don't sync them, I download them. So at the moment I've only got a few loot filters to access, and they're all fairly low level ones, which is why in the footage you're going to see there's tons of loot where you're thinking, well, you've got like 100 odd X in your stash, why are you showing wisdom scrolls and stuff on the floor? And it's just because I haven't had time to do another loot filter and sync it with Path of Exile. Second, and probably the biggest drawback, is I don't think there's a way to use third-party applications. So things like Awaken POE Trade, Lab Compass, stuff like that, you have to live without. There might be ways through like scripts and hotkeys and stuff to get them working, but I really can't be bothered with looking into it. So yeah, for stuff like that, you're going to have to look up items that you find. But for me, so I'm quite experienced in the game, once I've a few days into the league, I kind of know what most stuff's worth. And when you find a rare item on the floor, you're realistically going into trade to have a look specifically what that item might be worth anyway. Now, I did try, as I say, GeForce Now ages ago when it first came out, because I had a gaming laptop and it definitely couldn't cope with Path of Exile. And the reason I stopped playing on it is because you couldn't copy stuff from your own web browser into the client. So if you wanted to do a trade search, you'd go, you'd search, you'd whisper, and then that copy would not paste into the game client. And at the time, you couldn't really open internet windows either. There was a way around it where you would go to MTX in-game, buy, and then it'll open up the Path of Exile website, and you can then go to trade. But it was just a lot of hassle. So I gave up in the end, and that was when I purchased my PC. They have fixed that now, which is really good because that was the one drawback that I had. I don't mind not having Awaken POE trade and lab running stuff and all that kind of a gumph, but I really don't want to have to mess around when doing trade searches, especially if 6 or 7 people don't respond. It's an absolute pain when it doesn't copy across. But they have fixed it now. You can copy stuff from your PC or your web browser into the client, and it works absolutely fine. Excellence Next still works because that reads actual server stuff. So as soon as your stash tabs update, Excellence Next is going to update when you fetch the profile. So there's definitely a quality of life issue when using it through GeForce Now, and there's lots of things that some people can't live without. They'd rather have bad performance in the game, or if your performance is acceptable and it doesn't bother you and it doesn't get you killed, there's very little point in doing it, because I think you have to pay for a subscription for it to be worthwhile, because you don't want to have to queue and you don't want to get put on maybe a rig that's worse than the one or equal to the one that you've got. And then the last thing to note is the way it works is that you basically connect to a remote server or PC hardware, whatever it is, and then it streams the footage to you. So you do need pretty good internet for it to even work. They recommend a minimum of 25 megabits per second for doing 1080p. I would think you probably need to be higher than that. I've got direct fiber to my house, so I have super high upload and download speeds anyway, so it's not an issue for me. So I don't know what it's going to be like. If you try it out and you're nearer to that threshold of 25 to 40 megabits per second. So that kind of just covers the pros and cons, and really why I'm using it is just so that I can have a better stream experience. So I'll probably do a test stream next time I've got some spare time, just to see if it works any better for my stream, which it should, because it's not using the hardware on my computer. So let's look at some comparison footage. So these two maps are two identically juiced Glacier maps in terms of they're both out. I've put a Deli Orb on both of them. I've put Exile Influence, and I'm going to use a Sentinel. So this is me on my PC doing it from my hardware. And as you can see, not only does the frame rate drop really low when I pop the Sentinel, it also goes really stuttery and choppy to the point it's really hard to control. Don't really know what I'm doing, and I just survive through luck. My character's quite maxed out, so he's very likely to survive even if I have a 1 or 2 second delay. But for a lot of builds I play, I need to really be reliant on being able to dodge out of the way, move quickly, and a lot of the time this has got me killed. And this is kind of standard performance for me, and it's about twice this bad when I stream, to the point where it goes down to 2 to 3 frames per second, and often the client just crashes. So let's load up the game in GeForce Now, and then we'll have a look at the comparison. So as you can see, the frame rate again still drops to kind of around 30, 35, sometimes even lower, but it's still smooth and it's consistent, and I feel like I'm in control of the character. And playing it on here compared to playing it on my PC feels like a night and day situation, and it just feels so much better. So we'll have a look at another situation here, which is in a simulacrum, getting to the higher waves like 25 plus. As you can see, when I go with my PC, it really struggles to be consistent, and I don't feel in control of my character at all. Again, get massive frame rate drops and massive stuttering. If I had a slightly weaker character, I would probably have died in this scenario, and these are, as I say, the reasons I'm looking to give GeForce Now a try. So then if we look at a much later wave, I think this is like wave 29, so it's much more juice, things are harder to kill, there's more effects going around, and it works much better. And this is with like a Soul Eater buff from my Headhunter. There's loads of stuff going on that would grind the game to a halt if I was using my local hardware, and it still feels nice and smooth going through GeForce Now. There are still a few occasions where the game does grind a little bit, in that I don't feel particularly in control, but it's really few and far between. I do die, and I don't think that's down to performance from the client. I think it's down to the fact that there's so much on the screen I can't really see anything, so I'm just standing still, holding the button, and hope Kosis doesn't kill me, and he does. And it is POE at the end of the day. The game's not brilliantly optimized. I know people with, top of the range PCs that still get bad performance every now and again. But as I say, I think the death was probably my fault rather than the hardware, though I would obviously like to blame the hardware. So for me, I'm certainly going to stick with GeForce Now. Well, I've paid for it for a month, so I may as well stick with it for at least that, and just see how it feels, because that is the one thing that was getting me down a bit about POE, was how shit it performed on my PC, and this certainly makes it feel a lot better. I just thought I'd bring a video out sharing my experiences, because I had a few people talking about it on Discord, and then in the forums I've seen a few people post, and there wasn't really anyone who can give definitive answers to kind of how it performs and whether it's worth the money. Now, whether it is worth the money at £18 a month is yet to be seen, but my hope is that in 1 or 2 years' time, we don't have the supply issue with all of these PC parts, and it's much cheaper to get a PC. So me spending what would be, say, £350 to £400 in 2 years on this subscription, if I can then save £1,000 and have a better PC at the end of it, then I'm happy with that. If not, I still get enjoyment for the fact that the game runs better. So I hope people might find this video helpful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.